Hello everyone, welcome to Straight Talks F1. The Saudi Arabian Grand Prix is done and it was a decent race. After the dull dud that was Bahrain, we finally have things to talk about. Yes, people can say there was no fight for the win, nothing much for the podium, but there were good battles in this race and the storylines that happened through the weekend. Even if we ignore the off track Red Bull drama that's happening, on track there was enough action and it all started because of Carlos Sainz's appendix. Really unfortunate he got diagnosed with appendicitis. A stellar podium in Bahrain, and this is the last thing Ferrari fans would have expected. But yes, he had to go for surgery, ruled out of the weekend just before FP3, and enter Oliver Bearman. What a story! A dream story! Debuting with Ferrari on a very short notice at the age of 18, and he did not even know before Friday afternoon. Couple of hours before FP3, he has to jump in the Ferrari to pick up where Carlos Sainz left. It is extremely difficult to do that, especially for a rookie driver like Bearman. But he passed with flying colors. Sensational debut through qualifying, points scored in his debut race. There's nothing much more he could have done. That's the best he could have done on such a short notice, and that speaks about his high caliber. Ollie Bearman is a star for the future, and I'm gonna dive deep into it. On the other side of it, Red Bull and Verstappen supremely dominant again. Not much to talk about them for the on-track action. It was all the drama that was going off-track. It's a proper daily soap drama by this point now. And there were penalties galore, and some strange and weird ones. On one hand, we have Kevin Magnussen getting 20-second worth of time penalties, one for cutting a corner basically while overtaking Tsunoda, completing the move off track, and the other one was for squeezing Alex Albon too hard, squeezing him too close to the wall. It does not make sense. 20-second worth of time penalties for those infringements. And on the other hand, we have Lando Norris who walks free for a jump start. Not a big deal, but then they made a big deal out of Kevin Magnussen's mistakes. But the good thing here, Haas got its redemption. They still scored a point, deployed a brilliant strategy, Kevin Magnussen doing the teamwork, and Nico Hulkenberg getting home a P10 finish. Hats off Haas. An absolute strategy masterclass. So an amazing race I would say for Ollie Bearman and his future team next year probably, Haas. But the Haas-terplans worked. The race pace was stupendous. The 1 point up for grabs, they have capitalized it well. So let's talk about those things, but let's talk about Ollie Bearman first. Oliver Bearman, living the dream at 18. Such a feel-good story. Absolute feel-good story. And it wasn't easy for him. Straight into FP3, then in qualifying, missing out Q3 by 300ths of a second, almost out qualifying Lewis Hamilton. That too on a fast, risky track like Jeddah. The walls are close, the best of the best can get caught out. We've seen Max Verstappen crash in qualifying here. We've seen Lance Stroll in the race itself. Mick Schumacher in 2022. So it's an unforgiving track. And to do what Bearman did, qualify P11 right in the middle of the field and still score points, bring home a P7 finish. Hats off Oliver Bearman. He stole the headlines. On Grand Prix debut, he was so spot on, trying to fight drivers, attacking them, be it with Tsunoda, Hulkenberg. He was right there. It did not feel like it was his first F1 race. He is a special talent. There's a reason people highly rate him, and he proved it why. He proved his high caliber. And to do a 50 lap Grand Prix distance, a full Grand Prix distance, on a track like Jeddah, where it's physically challenging, he wasn't ready for that kind of a physical challenge. Driving in F2 cars and driving in F1 is a completely different thing. So fantastic performance, fitness wise, his presence of mind, while fighting drivers, pulling off moves, and at the end of it, Norris and Hamilton were chasing him on much fresher, softer tires, and he kept his pace going, did not come under pressure, and had the presence of mind to understand the situation The two faster drivers are coming behind him. And yeah, he does it in F2 all the time. He's done it in junior categories. He's got a stellar record. But when he comes to F1, it's a whole different kind of pressure. To maintain your race pace at a track like Jeddah and at the same time be aware that two drivers who are on faster strategy are chasing you, hunting you down in your debut F1 race. That's quite special from Bearman. Point scorer on debut for Ferrari. Quite expected that Ferrari car on the podium with Leclerc, so Bearman should have scored points. But to deliver and execute on that, we've seen rookies fail, so Oliver Bearman deserves all the applause he can get. And he's got a very weird statistic now. He's got more points in F1 than F2. He did not score points in Bahrain, and this weekend, of course, he has not participated in both F2 races. He had got pole, but those points went to Kushmaini. So unfortunate for his F2 campaign. He would want to win the title this year, his second season. But I think given he's got points in F1, I don't think Bearman's gonna complain about his F2 tally being 0 for the season. What about his F1 prospect? He was already being touted for a Haas seat next year. Even Haas has been interested in signing him up. Don't know whom he replaces, Hulkenberg or Magnussen, but he should be on the grid next year. Be it Haas, Williams, Sauber, wherever there's an available seat, Oliver Bearman should be on the grid next year. The kind of performance he showed in Saudi, he deserves a seat 100%. So fingers crossed for Oliver Bearman. The story of the weekend, I would say. Hopefully, Carlos Sainz recovers well for Australia. But even if he doesn't, Ferrari have got a solid backup in Bearman. And Charles Leclerc, podium, but people are not talking about him more. All the spotlight is on Bearman. So kind of a sign of his luck. But Charles Leclerc, the maximum that he could do, P3 finish, getting the fastest lap at the end. He had decent pace in qualifying, got P2, but ahead of Red Bull, there was no chance Leclerc could be challenging them for the win. So yes, Ferrari have pace, but it's not enough to beat Red Bull at the moment. But overall, a good weekend for Ferrari, I would say. Oliver Bearman making the most of his debut. Charles Leclerc making the most of what he could get. Podium and fastest lap. So despite Carlos Sainz's setback, Ferrari did a great weekend, I would say. Now the next big story, Haas. The Haas-terplan is finally in motion. They pulled off a big brain strategy. Despite all the penalties, they ensured they scored a point when it was up for grabs. And how was it up for grabs? As I said in the last episode, one of the top 5 teams, someone from them misses out, crashes out, or has a retirement. That's the chance for someone like Haas, Sauber, Williams to capitalize and score points. And that's what Haas did. Lance Stroll did the most Lance Stroll thing he could, crashed out and binned it in the wall. So that opened up the game for someone like Haas, Sauber, Williams. And Haas got the advantage because they were ahead of everyone, fighting in P11 and 10 on the brink of the top 10. But then Magnussen, fighting with Alex Albon, got a 10-second penalty for squeezing him too hard against the wall. Now, the precedent for this incident is a 5-second penalty. Every time that kind of a move happens, it's a 5-second penalty. Yes, it was dangerous. It could have ended Albon's race. It gave him damage, some front wing damage, but he was still in the race. So it does not make sense why Magnussen was given a 10-second penalty. Fair enough, he squeezed him too hard against the wall. But when previously for similar incidents a 5-second penalty is given, don't understand the harshness against Magnussen here. Then again Tsunoda. He completed a move off track, went all 4 wheels off the track and got penalized again. Another 10-second penalty. If it was a case of overtaking off track, they could have asked him to give the place back. So quite strange on why that penalty was given. Again, he could have walked away with the 5 second there too. So instead of 20 seconds, It could have been two 5-second penalties, half of what he got. But despite these penalties, Haas ensured they walked away with the point. It was an amazing strategy, a masterclass from Haas. They kept Hulkenberg out on mediums for as long as they could. Behind him, Magnussen created a gap. He literally formed a train and ensured no one passed. Albon, Ocon, Sonoda, Ricardo, everyone was aboard that train, the DRS train. They were fighting amongst each other. They were trying to pass Magnussen, but K-Mag was like, "You shall not pass." That's what Haas posted on Twitter. But yes, from the wider perspective, it was an amazing strategy. And it worked out well for them. Hulkenberg pitted to get into P10, a net P10. And after Zhou Guanyu pitted, he got into P10. Clear air in front of him. Magnussen behind him. Yes, he had 20-second worth of penalties. But what he had ensured that his teammate got home the points that they need. And because of that, by just 1 point, but they're P6 in the constructors standings. And given how rare these points are for teams like Williams, Sauber, Haas have done a fabulous job. Top class teamwork from Magnussen and Hulkenberg. Can't believe one of them has to make way for Oliver Bearman next year. Let's see how it works out. But hats off to Kevin Magnussen. And despite all those penalties for 20 seconds, he still only got demoted to P12. So not a big deal. Haas scored a point, and that was a rather good finish for them. P10 and P12. Something that nobody expected at the start of the season. They themselves were not expecting it. Their tire deck and their race pace would be so good. It's much better than last year. They're able to fight, they're able to stay ahead, put out consistent lap times, maintain a good race pace, and they capitalized on it well. When the opportunity came to score a point, the Haas-terplan cooked, and it cooked amazingly. So mega job Haas, mega job K-Mag and Hulk. Now Lando Norris is a lucky. He's a lucky fella. Absolutely lucky to walk away with a jump start. It's a very trivial thing, a very small thing that he jumped the start. He'd claimed after qualifying the only way to win the race is to jump the start. And he did exactly that. So hats off to him for sticking to his words that he was going to jump the start, and he did. But he was quite lucky to not get a penalty for it. Now, multiple things to unpack here. Last year, two incidents happened. Ocon in Bahrain, Alonso in Saudi itself. They were out of position on the grid box and they got 5-second penalties each. And Lando Norris was in breach of two rules over here. Firstly, you cannot move the car before the lights go out. And secondly, being out of position. He did both. He left his clutch and the car moved outside the box marginally before the lights went out, and then he stopped and then started again. George Russell reported it right there and there itself that Norris did a jump start. Two rules breached and still no penalty. Fair enough, he did not get any advantage out of it. So I understand the sporting side of it, that it was a very trivial thing, a small thing. He did not gain any advantage out of it, rather lost out positions in the initial phase of the race. So it doesn't even matter what Lando Norris does here. In hindsight, in the broader context of the race, it's a very trivial thing. A jump start is a very small infringement. Even last year when Alonso and Ocon got those penalties, I felt it was a bit too harsh. Getting out of the grid box and getting a penalty for it, that compromises their race. But they followed the rules last year, and this year they haven't. The reasoning behind it is, Autosport reported, there's a primary sensor, there's a transponder that monitors these jump starts. For Norris's case, that sensor did not go off. That's the reason they did not penalize him. Because the sensor did not detect it was a jump start, they did not penalize him. So inconsistency, 12 months ago, Alonso Ocon getting out of the box, got 5 seconds. Norris this year, jumping the start marginally and not getting penalized. Again, it's a trivial thing, doesn't matter, small infringement. But then on the other hand, there's Kevin Magnussen, who gets two 10-second penalties. Isn't that harsh? Yes, one can argue dangerous driving standards and everything, but those could have been lenient too. He could have got two 5-second penalties. So K Mac gets 20-second worth of penalties, and Lando Norris walks free. Quite strange and weird. And again, very different incidents. Norris's jump start and Kevin Magnussen's overtaking maneuvers, quite aggressive and dangerous, one would say. Aggressive at the very least. But given how Alonso and Ocon got 5 seconds last year, Lando was very lucky to get away from this. He was lucky to get away from this without any penalty. Because that was a clear error at the race start. He knows it, McLaren know it, and eventually the race got compromised because of the strategy itself. Him and Hamilton were on offset strategies, stayed out as Hulkenberg on the medium tires, waiting for the safety car. Did not work out for them. It's always a very iffy strategy, waiting out for a safety car. But yeah, moving on, Hamilton still gave us a very good battle with Oscar Piastri. Oscar Piastri on fresher hard tires, Hamilton on aging medium tires, and their battle went on and on and on. For 20 laps, Hamilton was like Kevin Magnussen, you shall not pass. So, quite a good battle, I would say, but something lagged in it. McLaren perhaps lacked the top speed. They said before the race they are lacking some straight line speed, and yes, they lack some top speed in the race. Piastri was trying to attempt to overtake lap after lap after lap, and he just wasn't able to. So, combination of factors, I feel. One, McLaren lacking the top speed, and the other thing may be Oscar Piastri not able to stick a move. He made a couple of attempts. On one attempt, he got past Hamilton, but then locked up into the runoff area and had to give the place back. So, combination of factors that Piastri not able to complete the move, and McLaren lacking that top speed. But McLaren and Mercedes, they are quite similar on race pace, I would say. They're able to stay with each other, quite consistent on pace, but they are not able to get past each other. So they're lacking that edge that Ferrari has. Ferrari are in sort of no man's land right now, quite behind Red Bull, but they're clear of McLaren, Mercedes, Aston. So if McLaren, Mercedes, they don't catch up with Ferrari, they could have their own battle for P3, I would say. Norris, Hamilton, Piastri, Russell. We could see these four drivers battling it out year long for their teams to clinch P3. So let's see how that pans out. McLaren looking to bring developments. So ideally they would want to fight Ferrari for P2, even Mercedes for that matter. But for McLaren, Piastri had a great result, I would say. P4, a well executed race. His strategy was on point, pitted during the safety car, got on the hard tires, ran till the end, got P4. And they nerfed Lando Norris' strategy. And fittingly so, I would say, because he did not get a penalty. So good self-sabotage there from McLaren. But yeah, jokes apart, Norris' strategy could have been better. Had he pitted during the safety car, that could have been a top 5 finish there, ahead of Alonso. Because McLaren have better pace than Aston. They certainly have better pace than Mercedes. Potential wise, it's not unlocked yet, but let's see. And speaking of Aston Martin, Alonso carried them through the weekend once again. P5 finish, and he was superb in qualifying. Super quick. At one point, he could have got the front row. He was that quick. The only thing that they were missing was some top speed. Their raw pace is not there. The final sector, they struggled big time. On average, they were roughly 2 to 3 tenths behind Ferrari and Red Bull in that final sector. And if it wasn't for Fernando Alonso, they could be nowhere. He was on it. His quali pace, race pace, maximize what he could get. A P5 finish. And on the other hand, Lance Stroll, He's got two incidents in two races. First was the lap 1 contact with Hulkenberg in Bahrain, and now this crashing out and binning it in the wall in Saudi. David Coulthard said on commentary, he's not a rookie anymore. It can happen with the best of the best, but he's not a rookie anymore. This is his 8th season in F1, debuted in 2017, 7-8 years in F1. By now, Lance Stroll should not be making these kind of errors. So that will cost Aston, even if they develop a car that can be better than Mercedes, better than McLaren, Lance Stroll not being there to back Fernando Alonso is going to cost them. But yeah, it is what it is. Alonso carrying the team for now. Let's see what happens with them. So Red Bull, they're cruising on track, but they are an absolute mess off track. On track, not much to say about, nothing much to note. A regulation weekend for them. Max Verstappen coming to qualifying, he was dominant, he was going to be dominant, and he took pole by 3/10 of a second. A slam down lap. One thing to note about that he smashed the record Hamilton set in Jeddah in 2021, and his unfulfilled lap that he could have got pole back then in 21. One can see he finally fulfilled it this year. Amazing lap, an amazing race executed as usual. It's become quite expected now that Verstappen is going to take the lead and he's going to cruise to victory. Sergio Perez behind him, a much better showing, I would say. Only 13 seconds behind Max, not 22, only 13 seconds behind. At this rate, he could easily catch Max by Austria or Silverstone, maybe. Yes, he'd be like 100 points behind in the championship, but fair enough, Red Bull won't mind it. As long as he's bringing P2, and maybe Verstappen has some issue in some or the other race. So Checo Perez is there to take the win when Verstappen doesn't. That's what they want. So regulation good race weekend for Red Bull. But because fans should not get bored, Red Bull are ensuring that there is enough drama going on off track because they are an absolute mess. It is a daily soap drama. It has become a daily soap drama off track for Red Bull. Christian Horner, still the team boss, and the female employee who had complained against him has been suspended on full pay. So there is huge chaos on social media. And Horner's comments in the press conference on Thursday, a week ago he was saying it is all good, business as usual, it's a regular investigation. Now he's bringing his family in, that there's been intrusion on his family by the media. So now they need to draw a line under it. Listening to his comments, it is difficult to not agree with what Jos Verstappen said. He may be playing the victim here. With all the family comments and everything, he just may be playing the victim here, even though allegedly he's not. But yeah, given that nobody knows the entire truth, it is very murky. These are muddy waters right now for Red Bull. With all the chats leaked and everything going on, it's quite irrelevant. Quite a shame when they're dominating so much on track. All this chaos is unfolding off track for them. But the bigger news was Helmut Marko being under the radar. He could have had a possible suspension. He himself said after qualifying that he may not be at the next race in Australia. And then on race day, after chatting with Oliver Mintzlaff, he's the MD of Red Bull, Marko confirmed that he's going to stay in his role. But the interesting thing was the way Max Verstappen reacted after Marko's comments after qualifying. When Verstappen got to know about Marko's comments that he may face a possible suspension, Verstappen was quite blunt as he is, saying that Marko has to stay for him or else he would consider his future at Red Bull. That was the essence of what he said. He said it could be a very big problem at the team if Marko is gone. And those comments perhaps forced Red Bull to retain Marko, to not take any action against him because they don't want to lose Max Verstappen. I don't know about Horner or Marko, but one thing's clear, Red Bull don't want to lose Max Verstappen in any case. So Verstappen quite open diplomatic but quite open to say that he may consider his future at Red Bull because he's quite loyal to Marco and he wants Helmut Marco there. So for now, Red Bull may have doused the fire. Marco saying that he is going to stay, but this does not seem like it is over. It does not seem like it is over. It sort of felt like a power play move from Marco and Verstappen. And at the same time, there have been rumors about Max going to Mercedes amid all this chaos at Red Bull. Toto Wolff has been increasingly vocal that he would love to have Max in the car, but he knows that he does not have the car to give it to Verstappen to attract him to come to Mercedes. At the moment, Red Bull is the fastest car. He admits that. And Toto Wolff knows Verstappen won't just switch, downgrade himself from Red Bull to Mercedes. Makes sense. Why would he? He's winning championships. He's winning races week in, week out. Why would he come to Mercedes? But with the amount of twists and turns we have seen in this Red Bull turmoil, this does not seem over. And from a competitive perspective, if Mercedes can sort their car out, Toto Wolff is going to go after Verstappen. He is not going to give up pursuing Verstappen if Mercedes can turn a corner in the car development. It's a long shot, but then again, this is a long season. 24 races, if they can make the right step forwards and build a good foundation to get back into contention next year, anything is possible. Toto Wolff said anything is possible. They cannot rule out a Max Verstappen to Mercedes move. And given Hamilton's gone, so he doesn't have to cater to all that rivalry aspect of Hamilton and Verstappen. Even if there is a 0.1% chance that Verstappen could come to Mercedes, Toto Wolff is taking it. He is taking it with both hands. So let's see how this Red Bull chaos unfolds, whether it settles down. The bottom line is Red Bull are not stable. They're dominant on track, but they are not stable. So things can shake up if their off-track shenanigans go overboard. We may see some big shake-up in the next 2 years. Mercedes and Ferrari would look to capitalize on that. So coming back to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, the core sporting stuff, a decent race, much better than Bahrain. Not many battles in the top 10, but behind them, the train behind Kevin Magnussen, Haas scoring a point. Overall, it gave us good action. We can say K-Max saved the race. Kevin Magnussen, with his aggressive driving, got those penalties. But then Haas ensured they made the most out of it despite those penalties. So hats off Haas. And the broadcast direction too. They were broadcasting it perfectly to show that battle, the lower midfield battle behind the top 10, because there was not much happening in the top 10. The battle for the lead was nowhere. The battle for the podium was nowhere. Only Piastri and Hamilton were battling. Quite uneventful again, but they ensured to keep us hooked with the battle behind the top 10. And the headlines go to Oliver Bearman. What a weekend! The 2024 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix would be remembered for Oliver Bearman's debut. P11 in qualifying, P7 in the race. An amazing first Grand Prix, that too at very short notice. So fingers crossed he does not sit on the sidelines next year. Because Bearman's got high class caliber, he deserves a seat in F1. Be it with Haas, Williams, Sauber, wherever there's a seat available, I hope he gets a seat. We have many F2 talents like Felipe Dragovic, Frederick Vesti, Theo Pourchaire, Liam Lawson. Lawson has showed his prowess last year, but he's still out of a seat. So hopefully Bearman gets that shot next year. Hopefully Lawson, Vesti, Pourchaire, these guys get a shot next year too. But that's the best Oliver Bearman could do. He said that's the best job interview I could have given. So even he is hoping that he gets a seat next year now. Fingers crossed he's a special talent. He may not get to drive in Australia. Carlos Sainz may recover. So it's back to F2 for Bearman. And let's hope that The Australian Grand Prix is even much more exciting than Saudi. Given that Verstappen is going to dominate again, that's quite clear now. So hope these midfield battles spice up more. Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari, these guys battle. And if some of them falter, teams like Haas and Sauber, Williams capitalize on that. So stay tuned to the podcast. It is only going to get better, I feel.